The child's sobs had drawn half the market square's attention, but Mina was already kneeling beside the boy, her voice soft and melodic. She hummed something low and soothing, a tune that seemed to wrap around the child's fear and gently unknot it. Within moments, his breathing steadied. Within a minute, he was wiping his eyes and looking around for his mother. Dante stood frozen 3 stalls away, his hand still gripping the apple he'd been about to purchase. That melody, that specific rise and fall of notes, the way it curved around itself like a question answering itself. He knew it the way he knew his own heartbeat, knew it in a place deeper than memory. His sister Sophia used to sing it. Every night before sleep, her voice would carry through the thin walls of their childhood home, turning their cramped apartment into something softer, safer. Their mother had sung it before her, and her mother before that, a Moretti lullaby passed down through generations like a secret language. But Sophia had died 30 years ago. She'd been 19, already engaged, already humming that same melody to the neighborhood children she minded for extra money. And when the fever took her in less than a week, that song had died too. His mother couldn't bear to hear it afterward, and Dante had never learned the words, only the tune that haunted the edges of his grief. He'd never heard anyone else sing it. Not in 3 decades of living in this city, not in all his travels before settling here. It was too specific, too uniquely Moretti to be coincidence. The child's mother appeared, swept her son into her arms with profuse thanks. Mina smiled and waved them away, standing to brush the dust from her knees. She was still humming. Dante's feet carried him forward before his mind caught up. The apple fell forgotten to the cobblestones. Where did you learn that song? Mina turned, surprise flickering across her features. For just a moment, less than a heartbeat, something else moved behind her eyes. Something ancient, and knowing that, didn't belong in a face so young. Then she smiled, warm and uncomplicated. This? I don't know. I've known it forever, I think. Why? Chapter 1. The file landed on Dante's desk with a weight that had nothing to do with its physical thickness. Marco stood across from him, arms crossed, jaw tight in that particular way that meant the news was bad. You're not going to like this. Dante didn't look up from the documents, though his eyes had stopped actually reading 3 paragraphs ago. Just tell me. The orphanage records are a dead end. She appeared there at age 4. No prior documentation, no birth certificate, nothing. Just a scared kid who wouldn't stop talking about a house with blue shutters. Marco shifted his weight. We ran the DNA anyway, standard protocol. Now Dante looked up. Marco's expression was carefully neutral, the kind of neutral that took effort. It came back with a familial match, close relative, sister-level close. The words didn't make sense. Dante's mind tried several different arrangements of them, searching for the interpretation that didn't defy everything he knew about death and time, and the fundamental order of reality. That's impossible. Sophia died 30 years ago. I identified her body myself. I know. Marco pulled out another sheet, this one dense with genetic markers and probability percentages that Dante didn't need translated. He'd ordered enough DNA tests in his line of work to read them fluently. The numbers didn't lie. Couldn't lie, really. We ran it 3 times. Different labs. Same result every time. Dante's hand moved to the photograph tucked in his desk drawer, the one he never showed anyone. Sophia at 17, laughing at something beyond the camera's frame. Her whole future still spread out before her like an unread map. What about the dreams? The house with blue shutters? We're looking. But boss, Marco hesitated. There's something else. The orphanage staff from back then, the ones we could track down, they all say the same thing. The kid had information she shouldn't have known. Details about families in the neighborhood, things that happened before she could have been there to see them. They thought maybe she'd overheard adults talking, but it was too specific. Dante finished. Marco nodded. Way too specific. Like she'd lived it herself. Bianca's wineglass stopped halfway to her lips. She'd been listening with practiced disinterest to her father's associate drone on about shipping routes, when the name dropped into conversation like a stone into still water. Mina, the girl from the market. The one Dante couldn't stop asking questions about. The one whose DNA results had come back impossible. She set the glass down with perfect control, her smile never wavering. But her mind was already racing, calculating, recalibrating the careful architecture of her 18-month plan. She'd worked too hard for this. Every demure glance, every thoughtfully timed visit, every carefully constructed moment of understanding when Dante's grief made him distant. It had all been designed to position her exactly where she needed to be. The Moretti empire was vast, its roots deep in legitimate business now, but its branches still heavy with the kind of power her family needed. Marriage was the cleanest way to claim it. Dante's sister had been dead for 30 years. Bianca had done the research herself, seen the death certificate. The burial records. Dead people didn't threaten anything. Except this one apparently did. She excused herself from the table with a graceful murmur about powder rooms and expectations. In the hallway she pulled out her phone, fingers steady as she composed a message to Luca. Her father's man. Loyal, efficient, and crucially not squeamish about methods. The Moretti girl. She's becoming a problem. Make it look accidental. Soon. Bianca deleted the message thread before the reply could come. Habit more than paranoia. She'd learned early that power left no paper trail. When she returned to the table, her smile was warm, her laugh light. She touched Dante's arm with exactly the right amount of affection, leaned in to whisper something inconsequential that made him smile despite the distraction she could see behind his eyes. He was thinking about the girl. About impossible DNA results, and songs that shouldn't exist, and mysteries that pulled at him like undertow. Bianca pressed closer, her hand finding his. You seem far away tonight. Just business, he said, the lie smooth but not quite convincing. She kissed his cheek, already mentally reviewing traffic patterns near Mina's apartment, thinking about brake lines and poorly lit streets, and the thousand small ways accidents happen to inconvenient people. Don't work too hard, she murmured against his ear. Some things can wait. But not this. This couldn't wait at all. The explosion threw Mina through her apartment door and into the hallway with enough force to crack 2 ribs. She felt them go, felt the sharp wrongness of bone meeting bone in ways it wasn't meant to. The air tasted like copper and gas and something chemical she couldn't name. Behind her, flames were already consuming everything she owned. The few photographs, the secondhand furniture, the life she'd carefully constructed from nothing. But that wasn't what made her scream. The smoke, thick and black and suffocating, triggered something deeper than fear. Her vision doubled, tripled, the burning hallway overlaying itself with another fire, another lifetime ago. She was 4 years old again. Small hands clutching at a woman's sleeve as they stumbled through smoke. The woman's face was a blur, but her voice was crystal clear, breaking on every word like something vital shattering. You have to forget, Tesoro. Do you understand? You'll forget everything. Your name, your home, everyone who loved you. It's the only way to keep you safe. Child Mina had sobbed, not understanding, only knowing that something terrible was being taken from her. The woman, mother, aunt, someone who loved her, pressed something into her palm. A locket, warm from body heat. When you're ready, you'll remember. When it's safe, I promise you'll remember. Then there were men shouting, and the woman was gone, and there was only smoke and fear, and a woman in a nurse's uniform who spoke in soothing tones, and led her away from everything she'd ever known. Mina came back to herself on the floor of the hallway, her neighbor's hands on her shoulders, his voice cutting through the memory like a knife through cobwebs. Stay with me. The ambulance is coming. But she barely heard him. Her hand moved to her throat, to the chain she'd worn for as long as she could remember. The locket she'd never been able to open, its seams sealed, as if it had been welded shut. The gas leak hadn't been an accident. Somewhere beneath the pain and the shock, and the impossible memory, she knew that, with absolute certainty, someone had tried to kill her, and in doing so, they'd cracked open a door she'd spent 26 years forgetting existed. Mina woke to find a stranger sitting beside her hospital bed. Not a stranger exactly. She'd seen him before, always at the edges of Dante's world, silent and watchful. The bodyguard with the burn scars that crawled up the left side of his neck and disappeared into his collar. He'd never spoken to her, but she'd felt his eyes on her more than once. Assessing. Waiting. Now he leaned forward, elbows on his knees, and his voice when he spoke was rough with decades of disuse. Your name isn't Mina. It's Alessia. Alessia Moretti. She should have been afraid. Should have called for the nurse, for security, for anyone. But something in his scarred face held her frozen. Something familiar in the shape of his jaw, the set of his eyes. I'm your uncle, Silas. Your father's brother. He pulled a photograph from his jacket, edges worn soft with handling. A family gathered around a table, a laughing couple, a teenage girl with Sophia's smile, and a small child with dark curls and eyes too, knowing for her age. This was taken 6 months before they came for us. They, the Romanos. The name came out like poison. Your father had something they wanted, information about their operations, evidence that could have destroyed them. They made him a deal, the evidence in exchange for his silence. He refused. Silas's hand tightened on the photograph. So they killed him. Killed your mother. Would have killed you and Sophia too, except what? Except the old woman told them about the prophecy. He looked up, met her eyes. Your grandmother on your mother's side was Strega, what some might call a witch, though that word doesn't capture it. She had visions, and she told the Romanos that killing you would bring their empire down within a generation. That you were marked, protected. Mina's hand moved unconsciously to her locket. They couldn't kill you, but they could make you disappear, make you forget. There's an old ritual, requires blood and smoke, and words that shouldn't be spoken. It severs memory at the root, makes a person into someone new. His voice cracked. Sophia and I got you out during the fire they used for the ritual, but we were too late to stop it completely. You forgot everything. Forgot us. Sophia, Mina whispered, Dante's sister. Your sister too. Half-sister, technically. Same father, different mothers. She spent 30 years searching for you, before the Romanos finally silenced her. He stood, moved to the window. Now you're remembering. And Bianca Romano knows it. That explosion was her work. The prophecy is coming true whether they like it or not. Silas turned back, and in his scarred face she saw something fierce and protective, and utterly unbreakable. Welcome home, Alessia. Let's make them regret they ever touched our family. Mina spread the photographs across Dante's private office, like a surgeon laying out instruments. Surveillance shots, party photos, seemingly innocent images pulled from social media and security footage. To anyone else they were meaningless fragments. To her, they were a map written in faces and moments and connections most people would never see. This one. She tapped a photo from Dante's charity gala 3 months ago. Antonio Vella. 3rd row, talking to the waiter. He's adjusting his cufflink. Left hand, 2 taps. That's Romano recognition signal. I saw the same gesture in a photograph from 1998 at Bianca's father's birthday party. Dante leaned over her shoulder, his presence solid, and still radiating the shock of learning who she really was. Vella's been with me for 8 years. And reporting to them for at least 6. She pulled another image forward. Here he is at a Romano restaurant opening. And here, at a wedding where Bianca's cousin was the best man. Always in the background. Always watching. Marco, standing by the door, swore quietly. That's 12 people. 12. Half of them have access to everything, Mina finished. She closed her eyes, and the images bloomed behind her eyelids in perfect detail. Every photograph she'd ever seen, every face, every gesture catalogued and cross-referenced in a mind that had never learned how to forget anything except herself. Your shipping schedules, your security rotations, your private meetings. Bianca didn't just infiltrate your organization, she built a surveillance network inside it. She opened her eyes, met Dante's gaze. The man who would have been her brother-in-law if Sophia had lived. The man whose empire her half-sister had died trying to protect. The engagement was never about love. It was about positioning. Once you married her, these 12 would have had legitimacy to move even higher in your ranks. Within 5 years, the Moretti Empire would have been Romano in everything but name. Dante's jaw tightened, but his voice stayed level. You're certain about all of them? I don't forget faces. Ever. She pulled out the final photograph. Bianca at 16, standing beside a man whose face bore the same cruel intelligence as hers. And I especially don't forget the face of the man who ordered my father's murder. Her uncle. He visited the orphanage twice when I was young. I remember him asking the staff about a girl who had nightmares about blue shutters. The room went very quiet. They've been watching me my whole life, Mina said softly, making sure the ritual held, making sure I stayed forgotten. She touched her locket, felt its weight like a promise coming due. But I remember now. I remember everything. Dante's hand covered hers. Gentle despite the violence she could feel coiling beneath his stillness. Then let's make sure they regret ever making you forget. The vineyard sprawled across the hillside like something from a Renaissance painting. All ordered rose and golden afternoon light. Neutral ground, Bianca had called it. A place where they could discuss terms, arrange a civilized separation, avoid unnecessary bloodshed. Mina had known it was a trap the moment the invitation arrived. She stood now in the villa's ancient wine cellar, surrounded by bottles that had aged longer than she'd been alive, and watched Bianca descend the stone steps with 12 armed men at her back. The same 12 faces Mina had identified. The conspiracy made flesh. I underestimated you, Bianca said, her voice echoing off the vaulted ceiling. I thought the ritual had broken you completely, made you into nothing. It almost did. Mina's hand rested on the wine rack beside her, fingers tracing the dusty bottles. But memory is stubborn. It finds its way back. Above them, the peace summit continued. Romano associates and Moretti loyalists attempting diplomacy while the real war happened in the dark beneath their feet. Dante was up there somewhere, playing his part, waiting for her signal. Bianca stepped closer, gun steady in her manicured hand. The prophecy said a Moretti daughter would destroy our family. We spent 30 years making sure that couldn't be you. And now you've already fulfilled it. Mina pulled a folder from behind the wine rack, let the photographs spill across the stone floor. These are the 12 men with you. All Romano operatives embedded in Dante's organization. All gathered here today because you promised them the empire would finally be theirs. So? Bianca's smile was sharp. They're my insurance, my proof of power. They're your mistake. Mina pulled a small device from her pocket. The detonator Marco had given her, keyed to the charges they'd placed throughout the villa's foundation. Not enough to bring down the whole structure, just enough to collapse the wine cellar and everything in it. Because the prophecy never said which Moretti daughter. It just said the daughter would be the one to light the fire that consumed the Romano line. Bianca's face went white. You're bluffing. You'll die too. No, I won't. Mina touched her locket, felt it warm beneath her fingers like a promise kept. Because I remember the way out. The old smuggler's tunnel Sophia showed me when we were children. The one only family knew about. She pressed the detonator. The world became sound and dust, and collapsing stone. Mina was already moving, muscle memory guiding her toward the gap in the wall that shouldn't exist. The hidden passage that led down and away and into darkness. Behind her, Bianca screamed. Not in pain, but in understanding. The 12 men who represented her family's infiltration, their decades of patient conspiracy, were buried beneath tons of stone. The Romano power structure, decapitated, in a single moment. And Bianca herself, trapped in the rubble, finally understood what the prophecy had always meant. The Moretti daughter, who destroyed the Romano line, wasn't Alessia. It was Bianca herself, Dante's fiancée, Sophia's would-be sister-in-law. The woman who'd positioned herself at the heart of the Moretti world to consume it from within. She'd become the thing she'd feared, and in trying to prevent the prophecy, she'd ensured it came true. Mina emerged from the tunnel into twilight air, clothes torn and lungs burning. Above her, the villa still stood. The Peace Summit attendees were streaming out in confusion, drawn by the sound of the collapse. Dante found her at the edge of the vineyard, pulled her against him with a fierceness that transcended their brief acquaintance, and reached back toward the family they'd both lost. Sophia would be proud, he whispered. Mina closed her eyes, felt the memories settle into place like pieces of a puzzle finally complete. Tell me about her. Tell me about our sister. I want to remember everything. The Mediterranean wind carried the scent of wild rosemary and sea salt, and Mina stood at the edge of the property with dirt under her fingernails and the sun warm on her shoulders. The foundation stretched before her, not the old stones that had survived the fire, but new concrete poured just last week, clean lines, fresh start. Dante crouched beside the eastern corner, running his hand along the framework that would become the kitchen. Sophia always said this spot had the best morning light. She'd sit here with her coffee and watch the sun come up over the water. Mina closed her eyes, and the memory rose unbidden. A teenage girl with paint-stained fingers and Sophia's laugh, showing a small child how the light changed colors as it moved across the floorboards, teaching her to see beauty in ordinary moments. I remember, she said softly. She used to make up stories about the fishing boats, give them all names and histories. Lucia appeared from the half-built framework carrying bottles of water, her architect's plans tucked under one arm. She'd been skeptical when they'd first approached her. Another member of the extended Moretti family tree, distant enough to have escaped the Romano purge but close enough to remember the stories. Now she studied the foundation with the same fierce protectiveness Mina had seen in Silas's scarred face. The blue shutters arrive next week, Lucia said, handing out water. Custom made, exactly the shade from the photographs. The photographs. Mina had hundreds now, recovered from storage units and safety deposit boxes, pieced together from relatives who'd scattered after the fire. Her childhood emerging in fragments, birthday parties and family dinners, and quiet afternoons that had seemed unremarkable until they were stolen. We're not rebuilding the old house, Dante said, standing to survey the work. The old house held too many ghosts. We're building something new, Mina agreed. She pulled the locket from beneath her shirt, finally opened, its catch broken by a jeweler who'd been both gentle and curious. Inside, a photograph no bigger than her thumbnail. Her father holding her, both of them laughing at something beyond the frame, but were bringing the best parts forward. Silas emerged from the unfinished doorway, his scarred hands dusted with sawdust. He'd taken to the construction work with unexpected enthusiasm, as if building could somehow compensate for the 30 years he'd spent searching. The bedroom frames are up. Want to see? They walked through spaces that existed more as intention than reality. Walls that were still just wooden skeletons. Rooms that lived primarily in Lucia's blueprints. But Mina could see it. Could see the kitchen where they'd gather for Sunday dinners. The library where Dante's business would slowly transform into something Sophia would have been proud of. The garden where memory and future would grow side by side. The Romano Empire collapsed completely last month, Dante said as they stood in what would become the living room. The surviving family members are scrambling. Weak, scattered. Good, Silas said simply. But Mina shook her head. The prophecy wasn't about revenge. Grandmother's visions were never that simple. She touched the foundation wall, felt the promise of home and its solidity. It was about this. About a family that was supposed to be destroyed, building itself back stronger than before. Lucia unfurled the plans across a makeshift table. Plywood balanced on sawhorses. 4 bedrooms, room for guests, room for... She trailed off, glancing at Mina. For family, Mina finished. Whatever shape that takes. The sun was setting now, painting the unfinished house in shades of amber and rose. In a few months, there would be walls and windows and the blue shutters from her dreams. There would be furniture chosen together and photographs hung with care and the sound of voices filling spaces that had been silent for too long. But even now, standing in the skeleton of something not yet real, Mina felt it. The truth the prophecy had always promised. You could forget everything. Your name, your home, everyone who loved you. You could be unmade and scattered and lost. But memory was patient. The family was stubborn. And some foundations, once laid, could never be completely destroyed. They would build here. They would remember. And in remembering, they would finally come home. If you enjoyed this story, tap the like button. It really helps more people find the channel. For more powerful stories about hidden identities, shocking twists, and moments that change everything, make sure you're subscribed. Drop a comment, and tell us what you think happened after the street froze. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next story.